The first monster that must frighten the audience in a horror film is the filmmaker himself. My whole career, I made films that your parents warned you against. And people say, he must live in a cave. And sure enough, they'll usually say, I just didn't expect you. I expected, and I say, what, Charles Manson? They say, yeah, kind of. With The Hills of Eyes, we knew they would be after us. So here's another, film from the damaged mind of this guy, Wes Craven. I was raised in a fundamentalist Baptist church, which my mother started going to when my mother and father were having problems. They didn't allow smoking, drinking. That was fine, but no movies. So I didn't really see, with the exception of Disney movies, I didn't see any movies in a theater until senior year in college, amazingly. And at the end of graduate school, still no plan except to be a writer. I went off and started teaching college in Westminster College in Pennsylvania for a year, and then Clarkson College in Potsdam, New York. I started seeing movies and became completely addicted to movies. And it was mid-'60s. It was during that period of just incredible richness from Europe, Fellini and Buñuel and Truffaut. So I got the bug, and I bought a camera, and I was just having a lot of fun. And my department chairman came to me and said, I don't know what you're doing fooling around with all this stupid movie stuff, but you're not going to have a job next year if you don't start on your PhD. So here I was married, I had 2 kids, and I went around to all my friends who were working on PhDs, and I said, well, what do you think I should do? And they said, don't do a PhD, it's horrible. It's years of drudgery and everything else. And so I went back to my department chairman like the next morning and said, I quit, and I'm going to get into the movies. And he just laughed in my face. And I must say, I really felt like I was insane. So I went down to New York and looked for work. My first job in the film business. And I was $70 a week messenger. But, within 10 months I was assistant manager of the post-production house. During that time I met another young guy, Sean Cunningham. And Sean had done one small film for this company in Boston. And they had told Sean, now we want you to make a scary movie. So Sean, he said, listen, you say you want to be a director, so why don't you go write something scary? And I said, I don't know anything about writing a scary movie. He says, well, you were raised to the fundamentals. Just pull all the skeletons out of the closet, I'll never forget that advice. So I went to a friend's house on Labor Day weekend and wrote Last House on the Left. And we got $90,000 to do it, 16 millimeter, and it got picked up by AIP and became a huge success scandal / thing. 3 years later, Sean and I had both been trying to make other kinds of films. And meanwhile, I'd met Peter Locke.
I thought he was very talented, a very smart guy. And he could do anything. And he had gone into the horror genre on Last House on the Left.
And he kept saying, you got to make another scary movie like Last House.
And I thought it was a good shot for us to take.
I kept saying, I don't want to do another one. Last House was very controversial, and a lot of people looked at me like I was insane. I resisted until I was broke. And finally, Peter says, listen, my wife's out in Vegas, and we can do something out in the desert, and just come on out. Well, write something for the desert. So I went to the New York Public Library and went through their murder and mayhem division and ran across the story of the Shawnee Bean family, which was, I think, a 16th or 17th century family that was cannibalistic, that would prey on travelers.
They were like highwaymen, but worse.
They would eat the horses, they would eat the people and everything, and they lived in a cave that was on a cliff facing the sea.
And on high tide, you couldn't find them because the water came in, and there was no trace of where they lived.
Finally, they were found by a survivor, ran away, and went to the king, and the king sent an expedition. The expedition found them, took them back to London. They did horrendous things to them. They broke them all on the wheel, hanged the women in front of the men, and then they dismembered the men. And I was so struck by how you have, on one hand, you have this feral family that's killing people and eating them, but if you look at it, they weren't doing anything that much worse than what civilization did to them when they caught them. And I just thought, wow, what a great kind of A-B of culture, you know, how the most civilized can be the most savage, and the most savage can be the most civilized.
That was the basis of The Hills Have Eyes.
I think I wrote a couple scripts. We were, you know, clearly a couple of guys that were just on our second film and like kind of winging it.
I'll get the money, and you write the script. We'll figure out the cast together, and let's go.
It was really ridiculous.
I said, let's go to California, and we went we went on our way, you know.
The location is outside Victorville in the Mojave, which is the high desert, about 100 miles from Los Angeles. A rented car, and we asked this guy we rented from, how do you get out? And we showed him a topographical map of this area in the desert we decided would be interesting. He said, you go out there, you'll die. It basically says it gets 125 degrees out there. And we said, well, okay, we'll take water. So we took like, I think a six-pack of Pepsi and some water and drove out in the middle of the desert.
They'd been to a lot of different places, but not the desert. This was my first desert experience.
It was probably summer, sometime really stupid, like the time you should never go into the desert. And you could drive for miles and miles and not see anything. The first time we got out of the car, because it was an air-conditioned car, we could not believe the heat.
It was 106, 114 degrees.
It just hit you like a furnace. You know, we're drinking water, drinking Pepsi, went through, wow, can you believe how much fluid we're putting down, you know?
And we just kept going and looking and finding, and we wound up in Apple Valley, the big dry lake there.
And we got out of the car, you know, turned the car off, and oh, this is great. It's really a hauntingly beautiful place. There's just vast spaces that are open and unused. It was virtually just abandoned.
I remember that when we saw it, we said, wow. Those rocks are forbidding, but they're also enchanting.
We got back to the car, no fluid, and the car wouldn't start. It was just, we looked at each other like, oh my God, we're gonna die. We're a bunch of stupid New Yorkers out here.
In the middle of the middle of the middle of nowhere.
And like, you know, 3 more cranks and the car started, and it was just like, whew. But that was how we found the place. Just, it was like pointing to a place on the map. I remember we cast here in Los Angeles. We had a place on Sunset Boulevard.
The audition consisted of crying. Everybody had to cry. Cry, please, now. And the test was who cried the best, who got the most scared and burst into the best tears.
Actually, the only thing I did before Hills was a religious film called All the King's Horses for Mark IV Pictures.
My agent had said, oh God, don't do this movie, don't do it, don't do it. You know, it's a horror movie, you don't want to do that to your career. And I love horror movies.
Bobby.
And I just loved Wes Craven, so I went, well, I have to do it.
What it meant to me was a big break.
It's a Mayday, Mom, not Maypole. Hmm? Mayday. Oh. Well, here, let me. Mayday, Mayday.
I mean, when you're starting out, you just want to work in something that hopefully people are going to see.
What the hell was that?
So Hills really is the start of my, like, professional career.
I was not the first choice for this part. Some other guy who was cuter and, I don't know, more believable got the part, but he turned it down. And they came back to me and said, so, are you still available? I said, yeah, please.
We also were looking for very unusual types, and we had a parade of bizarre, you know, tall, huge, geeky, strange-looking people.
They first wanted me to go up for the girl, in the, you know, part Dee Wallace played, and I really wanted to play the animal girl.
Don't you make a noise when you walk.
Here.
Oh, no, you don't.
That's a challenging part. Something I can just bite my teeth into it.
Part of the casting, I know, for Ruby was that she had to be able to run very quickly, so we would have foot races out in the parking lot for the actresses.
Wes had his chosen few line up outside in the parking lot.
We wanted to see them run to make sure that they were athletic and they were going to be able to handle what Wes had in store for them.
And so he said, 1, 2, 3, go, and everyone ran. I stood there and just, he looked at him, he looked at me like, why aren't you running? And I went, whoosh, and just took off and bypassed everybody, hit the pole, made it back, and he went, you know, gave me that look, you know, and I ended up getting the part.
And then Michael Berryman walked in, and he's really extraordinary. He said, look, I have, I think, 26 birth defects.
I was born premature, and my cranium wasn't fully formed, so I had to have some reconstructive surgery. And there's the fissures on the side of my head from where they cut through with the scalpel and spread the skull apart, and then put some bone spacers in there, and it fully developed, and that's how we got the the face that we got.
At the same time, it was very bright and completely, on top of everything.
And I'm going, what's this story about? Okay. Okay, and I'm one of the cannibal family members?
He took direction and was just a wonderful guy. So he was, of course, immediately hired.
And we went out to the desert and kicked some ass.
Eventually, after prep, we shot most of this in Apple Valley. I just remember the hotel was overrun with us.
It was just a small hotel. And, we would go out every day from there.
In fact, I drove one of the Winnebagos every day, and we'd fill the Winnebagos up with people who needed a ride to the set. The paved road probably went on 10 miles and then 20 miles down a dirt road to get to the location.
When I saw the size of the production, I thought, this isn't really a movie.
The conditions were primitive, to say the least.
It was an exploitation film. You figure it out.
Low budget means inexperienced people who are willing to work hard and not the best conditions. And that's what this was.
I mean, it really was, let's put on a show.
Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland, let's put on a show time.
Most of the time I ended up doing my own makeup.
We had a blast. We're all in the same boat together. Felt like we were a bunch of college kids, going out and making a movie, having a good time.
Not really knowing a great deal about, exactly what we were doing.
Everybody was learning, and it was very, very low budget.
I think our budget was somewhere between $275,000 and $325,000. To me, that was a huge budget. Last House budget was $90,000, and we had a crew of 7, and this we had a crew of like 15. So wow, we were really smoking, Eric Saarinen was actually quite a cultured young man, son of Eero Saarinen, the architect.
I think I had done You Light Up My Life, and that made money, and so Peter Locke was interested in that, and he pretty much said, you'll do. I worked my way up through Corman Films and features, Summer School Teachers, Eat My Dust, Death Race 2000. I pretty much picked the crew.
As a young film crew working with Corman, had made probably a dozen films already, so they were much more experienced than we were.
I wanted to shoot in 35.
I didn't have a thought of ever shooting in 35 millimeter. I mean, 16 millimeter to me was just, it was so much better than 8 millimeter.
16 is a definite, handicap. On the other hand, it's faster. It's easy to handhold and still do sync sound.
I think the cameras are all rented from a famous California pornographer, if I'm not mistaken. We got a deal on it.
Well, I'll take a look around. I don't see any.
Didn't hear you. I was just cleaning up.
I'll fill it up and check the oil and water.
Give you what I got. Ain't got much. I'm just closing down.
As bizarre as the premise of the film is, I've always struggled to make the people in it seem real.
Don't you mind them. They just want to play. That's a good girl. Odd. Telling you, we're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I wonder how far it is to the nearest cheeseburger.
That white bread family from Cleveland, those were people that I grew up with. That mother was like my mother,
You folks go right to California and have a good trip. You folks stay on the main road now, you hear? Stay on the main road.
There's this family, and they've inherited a silver mine. They're driving through someplace in Nevada or something. They're from the East Coast. They don't know shit, and, they go off across the road. There are a certain amount of American horror films that are about getting off the main road, getting off the beaten track, and getting, in essence, leaving civilization. It just makes you feel vulnerable. It makes you feel small. It makes you feel like you're suddenly thrust back to a time when human beings were very small figures on a big plane. One of the things I did with The whole family they're consciously stripping away everything that they had of civilization to protect themselves. You know, first their car and their trailer, and everything was just taken away from them. You see what they have when they're down just to their core, you know, resources.
Never you mind.
And there's a Ferrell family. The names of the Ferrell family were based on the planets. Papa Jupiter, he stood for the primal father.
I heard you tried to run away.
No, Papa, no.
That father that you just would never, ever cross.
I fixed Grandpa Fred good. I like fixing people good.
His ferocity went beyond anything you could imagine.
You heard what?
I'll go find him.
And Pluto is the least known of the planets and kind of strangely shaped. And Mars, of course, the god of war, and so terrified by your father that you can't find your own manhood.
Did you kill them all like I told you to? Did you kill them all like I said?
Ruby was like the gem among the family that, you know, was different. It had that sort of ray of hope within her to break out of the family. I guess it was the first time that I was just fascinated by this kind of flip side of everything in human culture. There's a Ferrell family and the white bread family, and they all match each other, sort of the dark side and the light side.
I think the location is one of the stars of the film. These prehistoric rocks, which sort of tumble up into the sky, a very creepy kind of dinosaur landscape. They found a really creepy place to shoot.
I was looking for something that was primordial, sort of at the beginning of time-ish. There were a lot of ways to get hurt out there. I mean, you know, everything had spines and spikes and burrs.
Don't step on that choyo cactus. Don't get near it, it'll jump out and bite you.
It's just nature at its rawest.
And you're doing take after take, and you're running along. Try not to trip, try not to slip, not hit cactus.
You could so easily lose your footing and just break your skull wide open. I mean,
I was wearing these really high shoes because I'm on the short side, and so, you know, wanted to look tall and leggy, and just running through that desert. Lots of bruises and scratches, and I really got scratched.
I remember Wes Craven keep saying, "She's still too pretty." And so they kept putting more dirt on me and putting black on my teeth.
Lotus! Take me!
I just remember climbing up and down and having to really get into the dirt and the grime and being cut up and being dirty. That was a tough shoot, though.
well, I think the wear and tear on everybody in this film was pretty extreme.
Here's a bunch of little actors in a trailer in the middle of nowhere, telling a story about a bunch of desperate people in a trailer in the middle of nowhere. So making the movie feels like the movie.
I just remember being incredibly tired.
Well, they're like 12-hour days, sometimes 14-hour days.
6-day weeks.
It was so hard to get it all done in the time that we had and in the environment we were shooting in.
You have to shoot like hell. You just keep doing it. I mean, you have to get through it.
You need to stay focused.
When you're constantly fighting the sun going down.
My primary memories are died of the heat, froze of the cold. That's it. There was no in between. In the daytime, it was unbelievably hot.
It gets up to 120 some degrees, and it's just like, it's like standing by a furnace. I think we had tarpaulins up all the time that we could duck under, hydrate.
Get in the shade, you know, stay hydrated.
There was no relief.
I think I was taking a bottle of water and pouring it on my head.
The heat, you know, the heat beats it out of you badly. And at nighttime, as soon as that sun went down, we started freezing.
So it would be down to, you know, in the 30s. You'd end up bundled up in sweaters and down parkas and whatever else you could throw on.
The desert is freezing. You freeze your beezers off. It was, you know, we would be out there before the sun, and it would be 40.
The lowest morale was when we were shooting night stuff inside a cave, and it was raining like hell, and we were standing in 6 or 8 inches of water. It was probably 30 or 40 degrees.
We had nothing. We were wearing garbage bags for rain slickers.
We were just, you know, sopping, and there wasn't anything we could do about it, you know.
And the wind, dry wind. I mean, if you watch the movie, You'll see us blowing everywhere.
It was dusty, it was dirty.
You're all dirty and gritty, and then you're crunching on your sandwich.
With the budget that they had, it wasn't going to be a picnic ever. And we all knew it going in.
Every time the other family would, one of the actors would complain about conditions, or I'm sore, or I got an owie.
I hate it out here.
Just uncomfortable, that's all.
It's more than uncomfortable.
Ooh, Jimmy and I and Lance, we would unmercifully tease them, call them babies, crybabies, wusses.
You toughen up because, you know, you don't get pampered like you do on a TV set or whatever. And you learn to just go with it.
I went home all beat up, but it was worth it. I felt a job well done.
I just would roll up my sleeves and just dive into it. I loved going to work every day.
They were hardworking guys and girls, and they liked what they were doing. They were really committed to this picture.
Honey, the entire crew and cast had to be committed because you couldn't do it in the conditions that we had to do it in if you weren't. It truly was people that wanted to get started in a business, and they were going to do what they had to do it.
I think the morale on the shoot actually got better as we went along. When we started, the crew had just come off of a Corman film, and they were just completely burned out because they were made to go so fast, and they had been working around the clock.
Right when you're running out of steam, you have to keep your nose to the grindstone.
I remember them being kind of short-tempered and kind of edgy with us for the first couple of weeks.
We were just trying to get the thing done.
I think when Eric Saarinen finally realized that we were out to do something kind of unusual and something that could be a little classic, it started to change.
I think we were influenced by Wes's, constant desire to make it better. And he was obviously a very talented guy and determined to do good filmmaking. Wes had a vision, and, I think people are attracted to people who have a vision.
I was completely knocked out by the Greek and Roman mythological tales. They were very primal, they were full of blood and gore and betrayal. The reason that those myths have stayed for so long is because they really nailed certain things about the human condition. They were carrying our cultures in a way that was elemental, boiled down to the barest bones of what we're all about. And my God, if you can do that, it'll be a really good horror film. You're totally justified in being here, and it will require of you all of your intelligence and intuition.
Wes Craven, he's a fabulous director to work with. He's very quiet spoken and very gentle, but yet he's a powerhouse. He's an actor's director.
This is a quiet, intellectual, introverted guy with a baseball cap that looked bigger than his head.
I remember Wes as just being very solid.
He knows his shots. He knows exactly what he wants. And there's no mystery about it. He's a sharp guy. He used to be a teacher. He's still a teacher.
There was a lot of hype around his name, new and up and coming and really important new director and all that stuff.
But I really, really thought throughout the production that Wes Craven would never make it as a director. Good Lord, this guy is never going to make it. He was just far too shy. And Wes went on to, continue to scare the crap out of America. Peter Locke was much more aggressive on the set. The producer jumping around, stand over here, talk up, okay, emote, really emote.
He was a nice guy. I mean, for a producer, he was a nice guy. Producers, they're not all nice.
I was on the set all the time. I was a hands-on producer, and that causes tension between the director and the producer.
I can remember there are times that I just hated Peter because he would be standing behind me saying, shoot, 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 shoot.
We had to shoot a schedule. We were going to run out of money.
And Eric Saarinen and I, the DP, would be like, if we get this shadow here.
It's a triangle. There's fast, cheap, and good. And you can have 2 out of 3 of those things, but you can never have all 3.
And of course, Peter's there, shoot, shoot.
It's the same thing over and over again. I need this, and I can't afford this. And you want to be able to get everything that the director wants. But when you can't, you have to go to him and say, this is all we can do.
It was a very real struggle between a young producer trying to get the thing shot on time and a director with artistic aspirations.
When I read the script and I read the part about the tarantula, I actually went, I don't know if I can do this part because they're just hairy and disgusting. They kept the little sucker in a little box or something. And I think at one point the handler actually had me put my arm out and let it crawl up my arm so I could just get used to it. And I didn't play with it very much. Working with that hairy little tarantula was not a piece of cake for me. I mean, I didn't have to act much in that scene, that's for sure. That was very hard for me.
There was the sort of dimorphism between Beauty and the Beast, which was the theme of the movie.
Brenda, don't.
Beauty gets killed and then Beast takes revenge.
The dogs were delightful.
Okay, go, go.
They loved the attention. They loved to hit their mark. The bionic dog Brackett was just wonderful. She's, oh, I'm in the mood. She was just such a good critter.
And of course, the animals are always treated better than the cast members. It's true. It's so true on any show.
Our art director, Bob Burns, had just come from doing Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and he had what he called his kit, and that was a truckload of just camouflage netting and skulls and bones and all these weird things that had been part of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The cave, for instance, where the Farrell family lived, he just went in there and made that place, triple creepy. The gas station was a real place. I believe we brought in the pumps, but it was literally an abandoned gas station out in the middle of nowhere. The desert is just full of surprises.
My favorite scene is with Grandpa Fred, when he's explaining to the father what's going on.
Car skidded off the road, we broke an axle. Now they're back at the trailer, and they're all okay.
Like hell they are. Give me that booze. It's something you should know about.
John Stedman just really was an asset to the production. He lent it so much realism.
I was in town getting supplies, and the whole damn house burned to the ground. My little baby girl was a cinder when I found her, but this monster kid wasn't even singed. I knew he'd done it. I hit him with a tire iron and I split his face wide open.
That was a long time ago.
Long enough to raise a passel of wild kids. Long enough for a devil kid to grow up to be a devil man.
The film was obviously very extreme.
Stuff that
Pretty far out for the time. It broke every single barrier of propriety and everything else.
It's a really rough movie.
It's a horror film.
I was feeling very strongly that if you're going to show violence on film, it should seem real and grab the audience and make them feel like they were in real life when it got brutal.
I think that's where the waters that we had jumped into. So if you go in there, you're going to go there.
All the sort of gory things, you want to see that in this kind of film. I mean, it wasn't gratuitous violence, it was violence. There's nothing gratuitous about it. That's what it was supposed to be.
It was kind of grim. But the actual filming of the violence, I remember being acutely aware that this is play acting. It's play acting, and then you put it together, and it's very real. The script called for the death of Daddy. He was to be tied to a tree and torched, and there are no trees in the desert. Peter Locke, the producer, solved that problem by looking around and making sure no one was coming, and then tying him to a Joshua tree, which is a protected species. In the middle of the night, they torched the Joshua tree. Burned up the man.
Virginia Vincent, I think, brought a tremendous sense of veracity to the film. My God, she had to go through such tremendous arcs of feelings.
That's not my Bob. That's not my Bob. That's not my Bob. That's not my...
No, it's not Bob.
Virginia Vincent, I think, had that trait of just making everything real, She did a great job.
Your dog made sport of my blood, you pig.
I'm gonna kill your kids for that. You come out here and stick your life in my face.
That scene where Jupiter is eating the arm of the father while he's talking to his head. It was right out of Goya. There's a famous painting by Goya of Cronus devouring his children, literally biting off a piece of one of his sons. For Papa Jupe, we wanted somebody with just tremendous personality, and I thought of James Whitworth. He had this wonderful booming voice and just a great sort of physical authority.
I'm gonna watch your goddamn car rush down. Yes, I will. I'll see the wind blow your dried up seeds away.
He started laughing on doing those lines.
I'll eat the brains of your kids.
You know, that whole diatribe was just like too much. That was a leg of lamb roast. And we were all hungry. It'd been a long time since lunch. It was late at night, and we still had to drive back to the hotel. We knew everything would be closed, and well, that tastes pretty damn good, you know. It was so wrong, but it was wonderful.
Mercury, you paying attention, Mercury? You know how to use that thing? Huh, Mercury?
Peter Locke decided he wanted to do a cameo. Says, okay, well, you'll be somebody called Mercury. You'll be like the Watchman.
That was it. I became Mercury.
He's up on the hill, and he's got the feathers on, and he goes,
Papa Jupe be so happy. Maybe I make a joke like last time and eat the toes.
and I answer, and he goes,
Okay, Pluto.
and then the dog pushes him.
That was Peter's cameo.
We were all very vicious.
Papa Jupiter, this here Mars.
You and Pluto and Mars?
We in, Papa, we in.
We just would go shopping, and anybody in our neighborhood was basically Meals on Wheels.
And I don't think we knew everything that was going to happen in the trailer. So it made the intensity much stronger.
The drama of it quite often is so extreme or so bizarre that it has to be done kind of as you do it.
I'd ask him to stage it.
And then you'll rehearse it for blocking and, you know, for general where the lights go.
And then we'd figure out what are the cool angles to shoot this at.
So it was all just handheld stuff.
When we were confident about our dry run and we knew where everything was, we just went for it.
I think one of the most significant scenes was the rape scene with Michael Berryman and myself. Wes was nervous about that scene because it was one of the first scenes that we shot of the entire movie. I had secretly whispered to Michael, when he calls action, let's really make out. And then they throw back that curtain. There was Michael and I doing this very romantic love scene, just very passionate. It was not a rape scene at all. Everybody, the crew, went into hysterics. It was so funny. And then Wes came over later and he said, thank you so much for breaking the ice and making everybody so comfortable with the scene. And it really made Michael and I able to commit to what we had to do. When he called action again, of course, we really, you know, did the rape scene. And just to be able to scream and be raped, I love the commitment to it.
She got into that, and it was terribly frightening. I don't think the screams left my head for 10 years. The cast knew what they were doing, and they acted in a way that made you feel it was real.
Women coming. Mars. Just get what we came for and get out.
I remember Dee Wallace being good at being scared. She was such a gifted actress that you would watch her break down and everybody would be all shook up.
Where the hell are you going with my baby?
My technique demands that I get my energy incredibly high. So I'm like this inside, and I'm all ready to like be attacked by these people. And I remember Wes going, all right, quiet on the set. Quiet on the set. Everybody just kept talking. And inside, I'm building and building. And I remember screaming, quiet. And everybody's headphones went whoa, flew off their head, you know, and I went, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm just so ready to do this scene. It doesn't take a lot on the page for me to understand who a mother with a little tiny baby would feel out in the desert when people are getting killed. I mean, she fought for that kid.
The terror aspect of that scene, it still holds so strong today. It created such a horrific element of entrapment. That room was really small, and it was just terrifying. And there's no way out. And then when he shoots Dee Wallace, and then the mom, especially when we stole the baby. The tension is so extreme at that point. When I watch it, I'm almost like, jumping up on my feet and going, no, stop. You can't. This just has to cease. We can't. This cannot continue. Of course, it's supposed to crescendo like that.
I come back for you later, girlie.
It really sets up the rest of the tension.
Because in life, in real life situations, things befall you. The test of your mettle is how you can respond. They have to get out of this again through their own devices.
I think the film, has a lot of substance to it. It's about how resourceful this family turned out to be when everything was stripped away from them.
They got food, ammo, they killed Dad and Lynn, and they got the baby, and they're gonna be back. What are we gonna do?
People respond to the question of what would I do if I had nothing but myself to respond to some great evil,
Maybe it's that, saber-toothed tiger thing.
Why are you doing this?
That very deep instinct of need to fight back.
What do you want?
That stuff survives all the generations.
It's a universal, ancient question, and the film is full of that question and some answers for it.
Damn you!
How even the most civilized person, if pushed far enough, could become an absolute killer.
Kill the baby!
Don't do it, time away. I don't want to see it.
I remember that being an option, killing the baby, and I would not have gone along with that. If they wanted to, I would have said, well, it's a mistake. The baby was so wonderful. You couldn't kill that baby. We loved that baby. And it was the sweetest little thing. We had to force it to cry. The scene where it's in the crib looking up, those little cute little eyes. You can't kill a baby. You just can't. A kid, okay, but a baby, no.
I know that there was a phrase that went around the cast and crew, if you kill the baby, we're leaving.
Well, I think all of us kind of felt that way.
It was like, if you kill that baby, I'm out of here.
There has to be something you walk away from the picture going, thank God.
I just remember people walking around all the time going, kill the baby.
You couldn't kill the baby.
Kill the baby.
I don't think that would have been a wise choice at all.
Yeah, the baby had to live. The baby had to live.
Wes had the tension built up so well at that point. It was wonderfully hideous. And then we get ours. I was a little concerned that maybe the dog would bite through the moccasin that I was wearing. And so I asked Mo DeCesso, our handler, I go, Mo, I will listen to you. I'll do exactly what you ask. How do we work with your animal? And he said, I will give him an order. He will clamp down a certain degree. He will hold, and that's all he will do. He will not bite farther, and he will not release until I give him the command.
The whole idea was to visually see the teeth going into the Achilles tendon and breaking the Achilles tendon. And it was just, it just looked absolutely real.
And then when the dog came running up the camera for the neck hit,
I wanted the dog to attack the actor right at the throat, be really growly, and said, you know, if I get this dog turned on by the actor's throat, he's liable to take the throat out.
yeah, his teeth were right near my neck or my face. On my collar, we had a big wad of leather, and the dog held on to that. The audiences would just go, yeah, 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 and I kind of like shrink and want to disappear.
People have said that my films are full of a lot of kind of dark humor, and I think it's true. You know, it's sort of a gallows humor. I guess I kind of cast a cold eye on life in general. There's a scene where the two kids are left, their mother's dead, and they decide to put her out in a lawn chair in the middle of the desert as bait. Well, have you ever seen that in a film? No. I mean, I could honestly say, no way. But yet it makes perfect sense for the scene in a bizarre, gross, appalling way.
I remember thinking, this is truly creepy.
I kind of thought, how are they going to do that? I mean, how are they going to pull that off? But they did.
I loved Wes's work. He's extremely inventive, as you could see in the kind of MacGyver-esque ending where they blow up the place by putting the matches on the door. It was great.
You have to understand, we only had one trailer, and we only had one shot at it.
You knew that was the end of the movie because they weren't going to go buy another one. So you knew that was it. My favorite scene is when I run up and try to hatchet him to death. To me, the edgier, the more fun. I can look back and go, that stuff was really fun.
Peter Locke came up to me after the take. He said, "That was great, kid. That was terrific. That's great. It was wonderful."
I remember the scene where the young father is backed up into a canyon and there's a rattlesnake. This snake handler came in.
And he looked like a typical, desert rat kind of person that lives out in the desert.
I don't know where they found him.
He'd been bit a few times, and he said, it's harmless.
There are rattlesnakes, and then there are sidewinders, and then there are Mojave green rattlesnakes.
The most poisonous of the rattlesnakes. It was like 6.5 feet long.
It's a big monster.
I remember the last second I said, now these snakes are milked, right? And I'd learned that term, which means that the venom had been taken out. He said, oh, no, they're ready to go.
He's got venom in him, but he's asleep.
The way they keep rattlesnakes is they freeze them. They bring them to the set frozen because it slows them down. They're cold-blooded and they hibernate.
We got ourselves into this narrow canyon and it was like being between two walls.
But by the time we got to this thing, the rattlesnake began to warm up because we didn't get to a shot until whatever.
And they opened this box just a little bit and this thing just went pew! was just out of that box and gone under the rocks, right at our feet.
Oh, holy shit.
Literally among our legs. Everybody dove and tried to run, and of course you can't in this narrow space.
And, you know, we were at risk.
It was just this moment of stark terror.
And we're all, you know, having our lunch break, and I noticed that people are jumping up to my left.
And I'm standing there going, what's wrong?
I put two and two together and figured, I think I'll just start stepping out of the way now.
It was like, where's the snake?
It was a really a scary moment.
Everybody about had a coronary. And lo and behold, that rattlesnake, it was a big one, is just slithering along.
And then we heard this guy say, I got him. He had this thing writhing in his hands. And I remember Peter said, we're going back outside. So we went back out and just shot it up against a rock face and, you know, with lots of open space around us. Janice had to pick up a snake and run with it.
I told him that I wasn't going to touch that snake. I don't touch worms. I was going to go near a snake. And Peter Locke says, Janice, pick up the snake. Would you pick up the snake? And I said, Peter, you pick up the snake, and I'll pick up the snake. So they put the snake down, and so it was moving, and Peter got kind of tiptoes over and touches it and drops it real fast. He says, I did it. Now you have to do it. So I said, okay. The handler comes and beats it up a few times to get it really mad. So I got this really mad rattlesnake with his tongue flying out its mouth and his tail going. They got me a stick with a little forked end on it. And then I walked up and I forked the snake and I picked him up. And I was into the part. I was Ruby, you know. You had to kill poor Lance.
That ending of the father stabbing Mars, when he stops and he looks at himself and he's covered with blood and felt at that instant like, my God, I've become them, you know, which is always the thing that is fascinating me about struggling with evil, is that you can become just as evil. You can become just as violent. It's something that we're not taught, programmed, prepared to face or even acknowledge, except in horror films. I remember the ending was too much for the MPAA.
In your face X. And it was just plain old goddamn X coming at you, X.
You struggle for weeks and weeks and months to get a sort of certain vision onto film, and you finally get it there, and then these people, whoever the hell they were, now I know who they were, but they get the right to tell you, no, you can't have that.
I guess it was what they considered wretched excess.
It drove me into a frenzy. I mean, it still does, of just, how can this be, you know?
And we said, okay, we can't really have an X. We had to cut and cut and cut to get an R-rated picture. A lot of goodies never showed up on the screen. So it was kind of a heartbreaker. You finish the film, and now you have to go back and finish the film for somebody else.
At the beginning, the title of the film was Blood Relations, which, of course, I thought was a wonderful pun, and Peter Locke didn't like it, and finally he had a big contest, and everybody was writing titles. We had hundreds of titles, and finally a friend of Peter's came up with The Hills of Eyes, and I said, that's such a bad title. And they tested it. I don't know how they tested it, probably with a bunch of their friends, and it came out as the title that everybody liked.
6 months later, I'm in a screening room, and I see the movie and realize, oh yeah, this is scary. This is going to work.
Watching the movie, very soon into it, I forgot that I was in it. I really watched the movie and really was frightened.
I came out of the theater and my legs were shaking. I was so scared. I didn't know going in that it would be anything different than some of these other low-budget films. But when I came out, I knew it was a scary film.
If you're watching The Hills Have Eyes even today and you're not squirming in your chair, then you're sedated or sleeping.
It made me on the edge of my seat, and I thought that was good, because it did what it wanted to do.
They wanted to see something different, but something different saw them first. The Hills Have Eyes.
We went on a little junket to promote the film. We were in Detroit. And during the viewing of the film, I'm sitting behind a 14-year-old son and his mom. The mother stands up and goes, "This movie is sick and depraved. And I thought it would be funny to tap her on the shoulder, and I did so, and she turned around, and I go, "You're damn right, lady." With a deep voice, this movie is sick. It's depraved.
What began as a vacation ended as a nightmare. The Hills Have Eyes.
We sold it all over, and it played successfully.
We set records in a lot of the places that we opened. We went to a couple of the early performances and it did extraordinarily well. It was a very, very healthy response and a lot of cheering and laughter. And
Yelling and screaming and, oh, they loved it. Are you kidding?
Walking through New York, people would come up to me and go, I just saw you. I saw you.
You know, it was very exciting. It was really exciting.
that's why we thought we had a huge hit on our hands. The big blow against The Hills of Eyes was Smoking the Bandit. It opened like the week after we opened. It did so well in the large venues that it swept into all the smaller theaters where we were playing and just blew us out.
It wasn't a breakout hit, but it wasn't a bust. It did okay. It played for years and years and years, you know, years.
I think it got a better response as the years went on and it became kind of a cult, somewhat classic.
The cult following of Hills Have Eyes is... it's astounding.
I mean, it was sort of like Rocky Horror to watch it with an audience.
The fans love it. They know every line. They know every line in the movie.
It's about time we got some powerful food around here. Colin Mercury.
Most of the fans of horror film conventions, they side on the cannibal side. The Hills family, they go, "Oh, it's so sad that Mars died. Oh, it's so sad that, you know, Papa Jupe couldn't come back."
This is an amazing little movie. I think everybody knows that it's special. I think it's a testament to how hard people work to be in the business.
Everybody was into it, and I think that's part of why it did become successful. I love that it's a cult classic, and I'm still alive. You know, that I've become a B scream queen. You know.
What happened?
He's dead.
I sum it up as a really great learning experience. I actually, in watching it again, thought, you know, that's pretty much in the moment. That's pretty much there for my first film.
They were long days, hard days. But the end product takes care of all that. It's like a warm bath. If it's a good film, it's you know, then everybody, the family, is happy.
Oh, I'm glad I did it. It's not Broadway, but it was certainly a great experience. And I'm glad I didn't listen to my agent.
I'm grateful to be in the movie. It opened the door for me to be in the horror genre. Thank you, Peter, Wes. You made history, buddies. Glad to be part of it.
Great time in my life. Great to be working with Wes. I put my whole self into it, and it's a fun, fun memory.
The Hills of Eyes was the last of my films where I did them with a very close friend and where there was only two of us basically making the film. It got me a lot of attention. I think somehow people saw after that there was a filmmaker there. It wasn't just, oh, let's slash a million throats and therefore it'll be a really good horror film. We were talking about something. People always are drawn to the film, and I have had people repeatedly tell me over the years, you know, the film I really like was The Hills of Eyes.